Well, okay, everyone, here is a sad story about a displaced letter Yud. But rest assured, it's a story that has a happy ending. In the book of Genesis, Abraham, whose name at this point of the story is still Avram, marries his niece Sarai. The name Sarai is spelt Shin Resh Yud. But because Avram and Sarai are destined for a greater role in the world as guiding lights for all humanity, they each undergo a name change that will reflect their expanded personalities. Avram's name is changed to Avraham, the new name standing for Av Hamon Goyim, a father to many nations. Sarai's name is changed to Sarah. But whereas Avram receives an additional letter to his name, one letter of Sarai's name, the letter Yud, is replaced, although in both instances, the additional or the replacement letter is a Hey. Well, the Talmud states that God created this world with the letter Hey and the next world with the letter Yud. A Yud is the smallest letter in the Hebrew alphabet, and it is, by the way, the only letter whose lowest point doesn't reach the bottom line. And therefore the Yud represents an elevated spiritual existence where one is involved in one's own spiritual relationship with God. And that, of course, is the nature of the world to come and why Yud represents the world to come. The world, however, this world is represented by the letter Hey, which, by the way, has both a Yud and a Dalet to make it up. The Dalet, which has a numerical value of 4, corresponds to the physical world, the 4 corners of the earth. But Avram and Sarah's new mission is to bring the Yud, representing godliness and spirituality, into the Dalet of the physical mundane world. And this fusion of Dalet, this world, and Yud, the spiritual world, forms the Hey, which reflects the nature and the ultimate purpose of this world. Well, all of that is very well, but the displaced Yud from Sarah's old name was mighty displeased. And a passage from the Midrash reads as follows. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai said, the Yud, which the Holy One, blessed be he, took from Sarai, soared aloft to the throne of the Holy One, blessed be he, and spoke before him and said, ruler of all the worlds, just because I am the smallest of the letters, you took me from Sarah the righteous? Is that fair? And the Midrash continues that God accepted Yud's complaint and promised to do something about it. But in the meantime, little Yud went into exile, unattached and flitting around the throne of the Holy One, waiting for restitution. Generations passed. Then a man called Hosea appears on the scene. He is of noble lineage. He is a scion of the tribe of Ephraim. He becomes very deeply attached to Moses, and he becomes Moses' prime student. And the Talmud describes how every night, after all the students had left the study hall, the Bet Midrash, Hosea would remain behind to clean up and to arrange the benches for the next day's studying. He finally shows up for the first time in Exodus chapter 17, where he successfully leads an army against the Amalekites. But his name remains unchanged. And Yud continues to wait. In Exodus chapter 32, Hosea appears again, but this time he's standing with Moses, apart from all the golden calf worshippers. Still no name change, and still little Yud waits. And finally, in this week's Torah portion, Shalach Lecha, in the book of Numbers, Moses adds the letter Yud to the beginning of Hosea's name, and he becomes Yehoshua, the new name meaning, may God give you strength. Sarah's Yud has finally found a new home as promised all those years before by God. Well, Rav Soloveitchik explains why it was Sarah's Yud that Joshua inherited. What is the connection between them? He says Moses suspected that the 12 spies might return with negative impressions, as indeed they did, or at least 10 of them. And he was very concerned that Joshua would follow the majority view, because Joshua was a person who had grown up in community, who was deeply embedded in community. He would instinctively opt for communal agreement to avoid discord. And Moses was concerned with this kind of background. Did he have the strength to take a stand and to break away from the conspiracy of the other spies, all of whom were also his companions, his peers, communal leaders? Sarah, by contrast, had always led a relatively private and spiritual life until she was charged, together with her husband Abraham, in their new mission. And she never lost her spiritual individuality, precisely the element that Moses was concerned that Joshua lacked. And therefore, says Rav Soloveitchik, it was her symbol of spiritual strength, represented by the Yud, that was added to Hosea's name. Nice, neat, and a happy ending. And so far, so good. But it leaves one question hanging. There were two spies who stood up to the majority, Joshua and Caleb. How come Caleb didn't need an additional blessing or name change before embarking on their mission? Well, according to the Midrash, Caleb actually went off on his own to visit the graves of the patriarchs and the matriarchs in the cave of Machpelah in Hebron, where they were all buried. And there he prayed to God for the strength to faithfully complete his mission without being ensnared in the spies' plotting. So whereas Joshua had to receive strength from his teacher and spiritual mentor, Caleb did it himself from within his own resources. There are many great gifts and privileges and benefits bestowed upon us as a result of our upbringing, our parents, our education, our social circumstances. But the moral strength that we develop from within ourselves, to the point that we are able to defy the enticing and persuasive voice of the majority, that voice developed from within ourselves is more precious than any blessings that we receive from the outside. And that is why in the Bible, God refers to Caleb as my servant, an accolade that is never bestowed on Joshua, despite the fact that he is great and he is Moses' successor. But it is Caleb who is called my servant. Shabbat Shalom.